The following lesson is linked to Learning Outcome 2, Reading and Viewing. It addresses the assessment standard that requires learners to explain the meaning of a wide range of written, visual, audio, and audiovisual texts. Learners should be able to recognize the writer's and/or the character's viewpoints and give supporting evidence from the texts.
Hello, welcome. I'm Nicola Shongwe. In this series of lessons, we've been discovering how to find out what someone really means or how to read between the lines. We've already seen that a writer can show their bias through their selection of facts. Do you remember what bias means? Bias refers to facts that are influenced by opinion. In this lesson, we are going to look at how a writer's order of facts can influence our impression. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to determine bias through the order of facts. When reading through the newspapers, people are presented with a lot of information, and they seldom read every single word. Generally, people will tend to select articles that are of specific interest to them, and then they skim through the rest of the newspaper. Also, people do not necessarily read through to the end of every single article. Writers know that most people tend to skim through the newspaper, so they can manipulate the reader by placing the information that they most want them to read in the headline and the opening paragraphs, whilst they can place the information that they least want them to read towards the end of the article. There are technical terms used for where information is placed in an article. The first is foregrounding. Foregrounding is placing the most important information first, where it will receive the most attention. The opposite, of course, is backgrounding. Backgrounding is placing less important information in a secondary position where it is less likely to receive attention. These concepts are similar to those that you would use when analyzing a picture. In most pictures, the subject to which the artist wants to draw your attention is placed in the foreground or the front of the picture, whereas the less important subject matter is behind the subject or in the background, like in this picture. Let's have a look at an article taken from the Sunday Times to demonstrate how the journalist has placed the information that he or she most wants you to see at the front of the article and leaving the rest to the end. Here's the title: Fender benders are women's work. Well, from the title alone, you can make quite a few assumptions. But before we go on, I want you to answer a few questions and see if your predictions turn out to be correct. Which gender do you think will be blamed for motorcar accidents? And which gender do you think the journalist is? In the article, the journalist presents some facts about the types of accidents that male and female drivers are most commonly involved in. Pay close attention to the facts that are given the most attention and see if your predictions were correct. We're still looking at the title. Fender benders are women's work. Well, first of all, do you know what a fender bender is? A fender is another name for a bumper. So, a fender bender refers to a minor accident in which only the bumper was damaged. It might also be called a bumper bash. This writer claims that these minor accidents are women's work. What do you normally think of when you see the words woman's work? One would tend to think of things like washing and ironing. Now, I wouldn't think of bumping fenders as work. So this writer is implying that women bump fenders so often that it is as though they're doing their normal job. The fact that the shortfalls of women drivers is placed in the heading foregrounds this information. Well, I'm intrigued. Let's see where this headline leads to. Women drivers have greater problems with parking than men, according to an analysis of accident claims by a British insurance company. Here, the idea that women aren't too good at parking is presented as a fact, and it can be supported by research. So far, we haven't been told anything about male drivers. This information has been backgrounded. So the idea that women are bad drivers is being foregrounded. The article continues. The findings reported by the Times newspaper will do little to bring harmony in the perennial argument over which sex makes the better drivers. Here, the fact that women drivers have problems with parking is given even more support, because not only has the journalist suggested that this is derived from documented research, but the article is also appearing in the Times newspaper, which is a highly respected publication. The journalist then continues that these findings will do little to end the argument about which sex makes the better drivers, implying that this is evidence that women are in fact worse than men. Let's look at what comes next in this article. The study found that women were almost twice as likely as men to have a collision in a parking lot, 23% more likely to hit a stationary car, and 15% more likely to reverse into another vehicle. Oh dear, the case against women drivers is mounting. And here it is supported by statistics that make it an even more weighty argument. Even I will admit that these figures all point towards negligence on the part of women drivers. If we stopped reading here, you would probably think that women are really not much good at driving. And because the information on male drivers has been backgrounded, you would tend to assume that men are better drivers. But if you read on to the end of the article, you would see that this follows. But before male drivers start congratulating themselves, the study also found that men have more serious accidents, make more costly insurance claims, and kill more pedestrians. So, tucked away at the very end of the article is some information that puts male drivers in a very bad light. In fact, I'm sure you will agree that killing off pedestrians is far worse than bumping into a parked car. Now, if you're reading carefully between the lines, you might have some questions to ask about this article. Why are the most serious accidents placed at the end of the article? And why are they not given as much coverage as the minor accidents mentioned earlier? It may be that the writer deliberately wanted to make women drivers appear worse than men drivers through the backgrounding and foregrounding of particular information. The purpose of today's lesson is to look at facts being backgrounded or foregrounded, not actually about which gender makes better or worse drivers. When we looked at the article, we saw some interesting things about where facts were placed in the article. Your task for today will be to take the information that was given in the article and restructure it in such a way that the shortfalls of male drivers are foregrounded. To recap, let's look at the facts from the article. Remember to write them down for your task. An analysis was conducted of accident claims by a British insurance company. Women drivers are almost twice as likely as men to have a collision in a parking lot. Women are 23% more likely to hit a stationary car. Women are 15% more likely to reverse into another vehicle. Male drivers have more serious accidents, make more costly insurance claims, and kill more pedestrians. These are the instructions for your task. Take the information from the article and reorder it so that the shortfalls of male drivers are foregrounded. In your revised article, you may want to make the title more female driver friendly. Well, I hope you're being encouraged to read more critically. Just think, if you can learn to read between the lines, you will be more difficult to fool. Goodbye.